Cool beans. Let's get started. Okay. So I didn't read yesterday because I was incredibly ill. But this morning I woke up and I said, you know, I feel a little bit better. I'm not going to pussy out of this one. So I got myself a couple of these very sexy, some of you guys that are part of the Building Blind channel on Instagram will have seen I've posted some of these cold pressed juices, health shots if you may, if you will. So I'll be taking one of those right now. I've got a fresh cup of coffee. And so the reason I didn't read yesterday was because I was sniffing quite a bit, coughing quite a bit. And so I moved all my meetings and trying my best not to do the same now. And so we, you know, living in a beautiful place, the energy's crazy. And I said to Monique last night, it's magical. And so today I want to use the spaces that we have. I want to read the next 2 chapters. I'm getting hot as hell in this jacket, but it's good because I need to sweat. And I've got a big week. This past week was insane. You know, with the new drawing room offer, the people are loving it and it's working. And so we're launching our first cohort call on Monday and Tuesday next week. And so we're really excited for that. But otherwise, general update is a quick side note rather. This morning I was looking at expanding the team this week, and so I had a couple of meetings, and this morning I reached out to a closed private network that I'm a part of, and the response was instantaneous. So cool, we've got these guys, you could use these guys, let them look at this, that and the other thing. And the funny thing was that the same feeling I had before posting the video story sequence this week, I think it was Monday or Tuesday, the same feeling I had before that was kind of like that feeling before you jump, bungee jump, before you do something that you've never done before, something that feels scary, etc., etc. Or you go up to do an oral in class or a presentation on things like that. And so this morning, before posting that in the group, I prepped a message, closed the message, prepped the message, closed the message. Thought, fuck it, I'll just leave it. I won't speak to the guys just yet. I want to see what I can do by myself. And the mistake was that I didn't do it sooner. Because as soon as I popped that message in, it wasn't even 30 seconds. And the guys had jumped into my DMs and said, hey, I can help you. And it's not because anybody gets anything out of it, it's because that's what that network is like. And so big shout out to James Gallagher, who's talking a lot about networking at the moment. He's not wrong. So if you haven't seen his videos on that, go have a look. Otherwise, we'll get going with the next chapter. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the first one. So here we go. Chapter 2. There is a science of getting rich. First, maybe I should take a shot of that so that I don't get 2 sniffles while I'm here. Cheers to health, eh? It's actually pretty cool. The chili definitely gets you. Woo! Alright, let's get into it. I think I'm going to cut this up a little bit. Another side note. So this morning I woke up and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and get a coffee at my favorite coffee place. I need to go to the shop quickly, so let me go and get Monique something. And as I arrived, you know, we're living in Franschhoek and I explained how this environment's magic and things like that. It's insane. You know, you drive up the road and you see the nicest cars and you see the nicest houses, and it's been crazy. And talking about the beauty of network, this house sitting situation we're in right now, we have our own place and things like that, but we were asked through friends of Monique's to come and house sit this beautiful hotel. And so we did, and we're here until end of September. So yesterday I went to collect a bicycle that the hotel had here and fixed it up. It's a cool mountain bike, went for mini service. And so starting when I feel better, I'll be out riding to gym on the bicycle. I rode it back yesterday quickly because we gave the bucket to Monique's mom. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So I'm excited to get back on the wheels. And let's get started with the rest of the book. Kind of like a new vlog style, you know? Cool, there is a science of getting rich. There is a science of getting rich, and it is an exact science, like algebra or arithmetic. There are certain laws which govern the process of acquiring riches. Once these laws are learned and obeyed by any man, he will get rich with a mathematical certainty. The ownership of money and property comes as a result of doing things in a certain way. Those who do things in a certain way, whether on purpose or accidentally, get rich, while those who do not do things in a certain way, no matter how hard they work or how able they are, remain poor. It will be annoying how many times the certain way is mentioned. I promise you, it comes in chapter 7 or 8. Right, so it is a natural law that causes, I hope my English teacher's not reading this or watching this. It is a natural law that like causes always produce like effects, and therefore any man or woman who learns to do things in a certain way will infallibly get rich. That the above statement is true is shown by the following facts. Getting rich is not a matter of environment, for if it were, all the people in certain neighborhoods would become wealthy. The people of one city would all be rich, with those of other towns would all be poor, or those of other towns would all be poor. Or the inhabitants of one state would roll in wealth, while others of an adjoining state would be in poverty. But everywhere where we see rich and poor living side by side in the same environment and often engaged in the same vocations, when two men are in the same locality and in the same business, and one gets rich while the other remains poor, it shows that getting rich is not primarily a matter of environment. Excuse me. Which is interesting because I was just talking about how being in this environment is magical, and everywhere I look, you know, there are nice things. What I did not mention was literally on the outside of this town, remember it's a farm town, there's a local community who don't live like what I just explained. So there you go. And further, the ability to do things in this certain way is not due solely to the possession of talent, for many people who have great talent remain poor, while others who have very little talent get rich. Studying the people who have got rich, we find that they are an average lot in all respects, having no greater talents and abilities than other men. It is evident that they do not get rich because they possess talents and abilities that other men have not, but because they happen to do things in a certain way. Getting rich is not the result of saving or thrift. Many very penurious people are poor, while free spenders often get rich. If you guys know what that word means, please comment down below. I'll Google it later. Or ask ChatGPT. Nor is getting rich due to doing things which often fail to do. For two men in the same business often do almost exactly the same things, and one gets rich while other remains poor or becomes bankrupt. From all these things, we must come to the conclusion that getting rich is the result of doing things in a certain way. If getting rich is the result of doing things in a certain way, and if like causes always produce like effects, then any man or woman who can do things in that way can become rich, and the whole matter is brought within the domain of the exact science. The question arises here whether this certain way may not be so difficult that only a few may follow it. This cannot be true, as we have seen, so far as natural ability is concerned. Talented people get rich and blockheads get rich. Intellectually brilliant people get rich and very stupid people get rich. Physically strong people get rich and weak and sickly people get rich. Some degree of ability to think and understand is, of course, essential. But in so far natural ability is concerned, any man or woman who has sense enough to read and understand these words can certainly get rich. How do you guys think I'm doing so far? It's pretty complicated, if you ask me, to a point. Location counts for something. One would not go to the heart of the Sahara and expect to do successful business. Getting rich involves the necessity of dealing with men and of being where there are people to deal. And if these people are inclined to deal in the way that you want to deal, so much the better. But that is about as far as environment goes. If anybody else in your town can get rich, so can you. And if anybody else in your state can get rich, so can you. Again, it is not a matter of choosing some particular business or profession. People get rich in every business and in every profession, while their next door neighbors in the same vocation remain in poverty. It is true that you will do best in business which you like and which is congenial to you. And if you have a certain talent which are well developed, you will do best in business which calls for the exercise of those talents. Also, you will do best in business excuse me, which is suited to your locality. An ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland, and a salmon fishery will succeed better in Northwest than in Florida, where there are no salmon. After working with so many people in the info space, especially, coaching with Educate and the programs that we did, what we taught were the fundamentals and the foundations, and it was just simply applying those in whatever market you were in and finding the market that you needed to work in. I think this is something fundamentally that people that want to get into business don't understand. But aside from the general limitations, getting rich is not dependent upon your engaging in some particular business, but upon your learning to do things in a certain way. If you are now in business and anybody else in your locality is getting rich in the same business while you are not getting rich, it is because you're not doing things in the same way that the other person is doing them. No one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. True, as you get capital, the increase becomes more easy and rapid, but one who has capital is already rich and does not need to consider how to become so. No matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in a certain way, you will begin to get rich, and you will begin to have capital. The getting rich of capital is a part of the process of getting rich, and it is a part of the result which invariably follows the doing of these things in a certain way. You may be the poorest man on the continent and be deeply in debt. You may have neither friends, influence, nor resources, but if you begin to do things in this way, you must infallibly begin to get rich, for like causes must produce like effects. If you have no capital, you can get capital. If you are in the wrong business, you can get into the right business. If you are in the wrong location, you can go to the right location, and you can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in a certain way which causes success. Cool. We're about to head on to chapter 3, which is pretty cool, and I like that the chapters are so short. Like causes, what did it say? For like causes must produce like effects. I've seen it this week. I've seen it in my business in the last 6 months. When I do things in this certain way, right, where I follow my intuition, which is the message for me for this year, is to, because I know my intuition tells me what to do, or it gives me insights. And so when I listen to it and I act on it immediately, the results speak for themselves. And they financially, environmentally, whatever. The vision that I put together in the beginning of this year, April 10th, I wrote a vision to achieve by April 10th, 2026. A lot of that has come true already. And it's because I'm doing things in that certain way. Shout out to Yannick from TNS for actually showing me the certain way before I even got to read this book. And so this week specifically, I've lived in this certain way, where it's literally just a thought produced into the way that you're thinking and taking action. Just the same way I explained this morning, where I wanted to post the hiring doc that we have in the community, and then I stopped, and then I posted it, and then I wanted to post again, and I stopped. Same way when I wanted to record the video or post the story sequence, I could have done what everybody else does and says, hey, I'm on a nice picture of a Porsche, write the whole story, which I know nobody's going to engage with. I prepped a few slides, messaged it, and we managed to this week close like $3,000 in DMs, which I've never done before. Well, not recently at least. And so it was really awesome to be able to see that. So it's because of a certain way. Not saying it's because of the book, it's because of the way that you look. All right. Chapter 3, here we go. Is opportunity monopolized? No. No man is kept poor because opportunity has been taken away from him. because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it. You may be shuttled from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. Probably it would be hard for you to get control of any of the great railroad systems. That field is pretty well monopolized, but the electrical railway business is still in its infancy and offers plenty of scope for enterprise, and it will be but a very few years until traffic and transportation through the air will become a great industry. And in all its branches will give employment to hundreds of thousands and perhaps to millions of people. Side notes, these books that we're reading now that have been recommended by a lot of people have been written a while ago. So it's not to say that you should take what they're saying as gospel. It's the principles and the fundamentals that they talk about that you should take from this. Obviously here they're talking about how air traffic or air transportation would certainly take over, but only down the line, where today it's what we're using every single day. All right, so where was I? Branches will give employment hundreds of thousands and perhaps to millions of people, which it done. Why not turn your attention to the development of aerial transportation instead of competing with J.J. Hill and others for a chance in this steam railway world? There you go. It's quite true that if you're a workman and in the employ of the Steel Trust, you have very little chance of becoming the owner of the plant in which you work. But it is also true that if you will commence to act in a certain way, you can soon leave the employ of the Steel Trust. You can buy a farm from 10 to 40 acres and engage in business as a producer of foodstuffs, right? There's a great opportunity at this time for men who will live upon small tracts of land and cultivate the same intensively. Such men will certainly get rich. You may say that it is impossible for you to get the land, but I'm going to prove to you that it is not impossible and that you can certainly get a farm if you will go to work in a certain way. Cool. Again, in the vision, we want to get a farm. I didn't specify that we would own the farm. I don't have 45 million rand to buy a farm, nor would I use my own 45 million rand to buy a farm. A great man by the name Dan Pena taught me something. By the way, I've never met him in person, so I call him my digital mentor. The acronym OPM, other people's money, i.e. the bank, friends, family, business partners, things like that. I'll give you an example of what he means by, if you want to own the steel factory, and you work in the steel factory, you might not ever become the owner of the steel factory, which in today's time is not true. You can actually, through succession planning, whether you have it in place at the office or not, you can pursue a promotional line of succession through starting at the bottom, janitor to CEO kind of thing. So those things have happened. It takes a lot of time, and there is some people have a natural skill to be able to communicate with people, which is majority of the time what gets them ahead. And so lately, when you look at the opportunity to do something like this, where in the last 5 years, 10 years maybe, I think since 2017, so between 5 and 10 years, you've seen a massive growth in the online space, info product markets big, online coaching, COVID came and pretty much multiplied the need for or opportunity for people to work remotely. And so the digital nomad became just something normal. You meet people every single day that are like, hey, what do you do? I'm in the online space, cool. And so traditional business has taken a back seat, where you've heard it from Cody Sanchez about boring businesses. You hear School of the Hard Knocks, that guy, I can't remember what his name is right now, but he interviews people, and some of those guys are in industrial property development, commercial, residential. You have all these different opportunities where I might meet someone. If you've seen my latest, or one of my latest Instagram stories was a chocolatier that we went to see for a tasting. And I simply went to him and asked him what his name was. I shook his hand. You have a beautiful place. I love the chocolates that you make. Have you thought about supplying hotels in the area or in Cape Town? Because the Cape Town chocolate market, funnily enough, is pretty fucking big. And so, we had a conversation and found out that he was pretty much at capacity. And so, right then and there, I could have walked away. But because of the trained way of thinking that I have, I asked him what would solve his problem, and he told me. And so I said, you know what, can I have your number? I'd love to help you with this. I'm happy to have a look for you, and then we can meet again and I can produce this information for you. And so he doesn't have the time of the day to look for that opportunity for himself. But what I can do now is I can produce value by going to find people who would be interested in working with him, number one. Number two, finding the thing that he was looking for. I'm not telling you because I can't. And presenting it to him with information and the right stuff, putting it in front of him and saying, cool, we can make this happen. You just need to say yes. And this is my cut of the deal. And that right there is a way of doing business. It doesn't necessarily have to be an agency. It doesn't have to be a freelance service. It doesn't have to be anything that you see online nowadays, drop shipping or e-com. It could literally be going to speak to your auntie, your uncle, your family, friends, whoever that has a business that you could say, hey, I'd love to have a look and see what's going on here, ask you a couple of questions. It takes me back to a time when I went to visit somebody in Ireland, and he took me around the manufacturing plant, and they produced, they manufactured airplane parts and those little soft steel packs for tablets. And so I was probably 21 at the time, and I have an interest in business, and so when I ask questions because I want to understand how well the business is doing. So typically the questions would be something like, what does it cost to produce a sheet like this? One of them. They produce millions of them a day. How many contracts do you have? What is the supply chain? Like vertical integration, horizontal, and help me understand the big picture. And then for it to be costing this much, what are the margins, and what does it go for at retail, and what are the margins? Who do you guys sell to? Are there any opportunities that you're looking for in this industry? I don't know where those questions come from usually. I think it's just from watching YouTube videos or business TV shows, The Apprentice with Donald Trump or whatever, but I've just had a keen eye for learning about things like that, and I don't know half of the shit that I'm supposed to know. But that's how anybody who's watching this, that doesn't feel like they've really monetize their experience in the online space. You should look for something that's uniquely yours. You don't have to copy somebody else's. Although a service business is the easiest way to get into the market and make some money, using contractor arbitrage, for example. But you see contractor arbitrage in traditional businesses, like in construction. I'm the guy I'm the deal maker. I go and find the deal. I phone a guy who can actually solve the deal, right? And I pay him I make the deal with him. I find out from contractor A, what do you charge to fulfill a job like this? Contractor B, what do you charge to fulfill a job like this? And then I go back to the client and I say, hey, it's going to cost you 30% more, and we can have it done in X amount of time. And he'll go yay or nay. And then I can either go back and negotiate better rates, or I can just say to them, cool, let's get started. And so that's how I would manage it. And while I'm doing that project, I take the speed or results of that project to the next client and say, hey, we just did X, Y, and Z for client A. Would you like to be client B? This is how we can assist you in your next development, for example. And so I spoke about this in the last video as well. It gets me every single time. It's things like this that excite the shit out of me. Like this is what I want to do eventually, is to be able to just mingle and work with people. And so you'll hear from even some of the younger guys that are the most successful. They are on their phone because they are speaking to people consistently. All right, cool. Excuse me, I digress. Let's move on to the next bit. Excuse me. Cool, I can feel the sniffles are about to start, so please excuse me while we complete the rest of this chapter, which is not too long. All right, so you may say that it is impossible for you to get the land, but I'm going to prove to you that it is not impossible, and that you can certainly get a farm if you will go to work in a certain way. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions, according to the needs of the whole and the particular stage of social evolution which has been reached. At present, in America, it is setting toward agriculture and the allied industries and professions. Today, opportunity is open before the factory worker in his line. It is open before the businessman who supplies the farmer more than before. the one who supplies the factory worker, and before the professional man who waits upon the farmer more than before the one who serves the working class. We're talking about vertical integration. Think about fruit and veg if you're from South Africa. They became Food Lovers Market, or even Woolworths, or any kind of Aldi or Tesco's or whatever. Those guys own the farms that produce the meat, the vegetables. They possibly own the factories that house, or the warehouses that store the food for more than one chain. And so those guys were thinking more like this, and so can you, but you need to get started with one thing, right? Cool. Where was I? There is abundance of opportunity for the man who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. So the factory workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trusts and combinations of capital. At a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. If the workers of America chose to do so, they could follow the example of their brothers in Belgium and other countries and establish great department stores and cooperative industries. They could elect men of their own class to office and pass laws favoring the development of such cooperative industries. And in a few years, they could take a peaceable possession of the industrial field. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. Excuse me. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by the ignorance or the mental slothfulness of his class. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will tell him how. No one is kept in poverty by a shortness of the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the capital of Washington might be built for every family on earth from the building material in the United States alone. And under intensive cultivation, this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk enough to clothe each person in the world finer than Solomon was arrayed in all his glory. Together with food enough to feed them all luxuriously, the visible supply is practically inexhaustible, and invincible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving, but all are shapes assumed by one thing. And the one thing is capitalized. There is no limit to the supply of formless stuff, also capitalized, or original substance, also capitalized. The universe is made out of it. So the universe is made out of formless stuff, original substance, and the one thing. But it is not all used in the making of the universe. The spaces in, through, and between the forms of visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance, with the formless stuff, with all the raw materials of all things. 10,000 times as much has been made, might still be made, and even when we should not have exhausted the supply of universal raw material. No man therefore is poor because nature is poor, or because there is not enough to go around. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. When the supply of building material is exhausted, more will be produced. When the soil is exhausted so that foodstuffs and materials for clothing will no longer grow upon it, it will be renewed, or more soil will be made. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if man is still in such a stage of social development that he needs gold and silver, more will be produced from the formless. The formless stuff responds to the needs of man. It will not let him be without any good thing. This is true of man collectively. The race as a whole is always abundantly rich, and if individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things which makes the individual man rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It is stuff which thinks. It is alive. It is always impelled towards more life. It is the natural and inherent impulse of life to seek to live more. It is the nature of intelligence to enlarge itself, and of consciousness to seek to extend its boundaries, to find fuller expression. The universe of forms has been made by formless living substance, throwing itself into form in order to express itself more fully. The universe is a great living presence, always moving inherently toward more life and fuller functioning. Excuse me, this is why I moved my meetings yesterday, because if I talk, which I love to do, my throat gets sore, and every 2 seconds you'll hear me. And anyway, nature is formed for the advancement of life. Its impelling motive is the increase of life. For this cause, everything which see what I mean? And so we carry on. For this cause, everything which can possibly minister to life is bountifully provided. There can be no lack unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. Okay, let's hear that again. There can be no lack unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. You are not kept poor by lack in the supply of riches. It is a fact which I shall demonstrate a little further on, that even the resources of the formless supply are at the command of the man or woman will act and think in a certain way. Excuse me. I think I'm going to leave it in just like it is. I'm not going to chop that up. The next chapter is the first principle in the science of getting rich, and the first principle is thought. If you can think it, you can bring it to life, or you can cause it to start coming to life, and then obviously action. It all ends with action. And so my message that I'll leave you guys with, or girls, is that if there is something that's been bothering you, a thought, an idea, which is different than a thought, to do something that feels right. And I don't mean emotionally feel, I mean intuition, intuitive feeling. Something that is that drives you from the inside, and you feel this calling or a movement towards something, or you might be laying in bed listening to this, and you are on your phone, or you had an idea last night, or a dream, or you're sitting there going, maybe I should message this person or that person and ask them about this, or let me actually try and do what Storm says and reach out to my uncle who has a logistics business. Even though I have no fucking idea what I'm going to ask him, I'm going to just ask him to explain to me what it is that his business actually does. That I'm a young aspiring entrepreneur, or person looking to grow in career, and you are looking for some guidance. And so can they spare half an hour every 3 or 4 days or once a week to share with you the knowledge that had brought them that far in life? And so even with that knowledge from a person who has worked for 25 years, built a business to support their family, and to really do well by themselves, and hire a team that has stayed with them and go through what it's like to hire and fire and let go, and the A players resign, that knowledge and wisdom is endless. And so, you know, that's why I love speaking to older people, because they talk from experience. And so we came up with a name called the wellness, or the wisdom well. And the well is short for wellness, but the wisdom is where the key's at, and the well goes on forever. So if there's anything you feel like is pulling you towards building a better life for yourself, for your family, and things like that, not to sound like everybody else that talks about how they want to take care of their family, they do want to do that. It is a beautiful feeling to decide to take responsibility, to look after your family, and to pursue greatness for yourself and in turn them. And so, you know, I would hope everybody that's watching this wants to do better, even if it's in a job. If you work in retail, like, never look down on something. This is where gratitude comes in. Shout out to Tom Youngs for talking a bit more about this. And I think that's something that I was lucky with, I guess. I was always grateful for the opportunities that I got, because I knew that I needed to make the most of every opportunity that I got, and that I had to create a certain life, but I didn't ever look at an opportunity or a job that I was at and go, I fucking hate this place. It was more like, this is temporary, I'm very grateful for it, I'm going to use this opportunity to meet people, especially when I worked in retail at Burberry, and when I worked at the restaurant, I wanted to shake hands and meet the right people, and so I did that. And in exchange, I didn't really make much money, but I became who I am. A lot of you guys won't know that I was incredibly shy, and at some point in my life, a teacher said to me, you need to become a cheerleader, it's going to change your life, and she was right. So pretty much owe all of my success to her, because she was the cause of this, if you think about it. And so yeah, now I sit here and record videos out of the blue just because I feel like it, and I pop stuff on Instagram, and I want all of you guys to do the same thing. If you feel like there's something that you want to share, share it. You shouldn't hold things to yourself. Don't isolate yourself from the world, share. Because what you say might inspire thought with somebody else, and so then you start impacting other people's lives positively. And that's something worth living for, in my opinion. So have an awesome rest of your weekend. Hope you enjoyed this. 3 chapters down. Tomorrow we'll read the first law, which is thought, or the first principle. And see you later. Cheers.